You know, I never get as excited when I host and I interview someone that's not from the East Coast, but you're from my favorite state in the country, or at least that's what a lot of what we're going to be talking about, and that's Las Vegas. And I fucking love that place. But anyway, my name is Rob Valencius. I am the host of the Drink Clock podcast, and I have with me Jarret Keene today. How you feeling today, bro?
I feel wonderful, but now that I'm here chatting with you, I wish we were doing this over brews at a local establishment here in Las Vegas. That'd be so much fun. But you know, I'm gonna hit the bar after this in your honor.
Well, I mean, I'm still drinking, so cheers. Either way,
I'm
but
trying to work sober today, but
um, but listen, so I have a list of fucking things. So obviously, what we're going to talk about a lot today is your books. You're an author. You get a PhD in creative writing from Florida State, which is super impressive. You're also a professor at UNLV, so you're an assistant for American literature and graphic novels,
yes.
right? You've written poetry, graphic novels, a bunch of different things. How the fuck do you do it all, man? I'm like, man, I don't remember what I did yesterday, and this guy's got fucking lit. Like, I'm writing these things down. I'm like, I don't have that. I don't do that. I never done that. But then again, that's the whole point of the podcast, right? Interview people who, are more interesting than I am. So.
Well, no, I mean, what happened was I got a PhD in creative writing, and lo and behold, you can't really do anything with it. So I immediately became a bar critic in Las Vegas. There were no jobs in 2001. So I had to make do and, carve out a career for myself working in what were then called the alternative weekly magazines, those free newspapers that came out every 7 days covering typically the alternative underground cultural scene. Here in Las Vegas, it was especially deranged. I don't know if you can imagine, but there was. I reviewed not just bars. I reviewed strip clubs for money. I did everything and anything I could to make a buck here in Las Vegas. If you wanted me to write about it, I would. I'd do it. I'd do it for money. That led me down a very dark
Dude,
road, as you can imagine.
Las Vegas is the sheer amount of debauchery.
Yes.
Like me and my fiance, it's our favorite place to go. I fucking love it. I probably talk about it every other podcast how much I enjoy it because we love to gamble. We love we're late night people. We're not early morning people. So just to know that we could fucking if we took a nap at 7 and woke up at 10 o'clock, we could still fucking get dressed and go, gamble and party and drink and there's still shit tons of people. I mean, the one time we went peak COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Peak COVID. And it's something we were going to do either way, but we wanted to get out there. And when they said that they were opening some of the establishments back up, some of the casinos, and there wasn't really going to be any shows and stuff like that. But it was super cheap. Our flight was super cheap. We normally stay at MGM. It's the one behind the strip. What the fuck's it called? MGM. It's escaping me right now. I'll look it up. But it's almost like an apartment. The three towers.
Yeah,
it's one of them.
The signature.
The signature. Yeah. So we normally stay there because it's basically an apartment. You have a living room, a kitchen. You have a fucking full size fridge. And listen, if you're listening to this and you're looking to travel to Vegas, you have to rent a fridge in almost every place that you go, and it's like $50 a day if you want a fridge. So the signature is not only cheaper than every place because it's not technically on the strip. You have to walk through MGM. But it's basically a fucking giant room. I think it's like 980 square feet.
Yeah.
And it's half the price of every other fucking hotel, and you get a fucking.
Yeah, it was like a luxury efficiency, set up there. It was you could cook, you could, store food, but I'm not. If I'm remembering correctly, it takes a while to get from the signature, your room in the signature to the street. There's a bit of a walk. Am I misremembering? Because it's been a while since I worked there. I actually worked at MGM Grand, so I know all the back of house stuff.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, you get your steps in. It's not like you stumble off the strip and you're there. But for the pricing,
yeah.
for me, it's like it's a no brainer. Like why would like? And I think the last time we stayed there, I used my fucking credit card points and booked it through my credit card. I didn't even have to fucking pay to stay at the Signature because
Right.
of I'm like I said, I'm a degenerate. So, but let's talk a little bit about your early years before we get into your new stuff and then we'll kind of get into your critic days. So talk to me a little bit about young Jarret Keene. What got you into the creative writing? I mean, I know. I guess the creative writing degree it's not like going to school for business, right? It's like a smaller specific degree.
Yeah.
So what got you into it? I mean, look, growing up, I was really big into sci-fi, and my creative writing class was one of my favorite classes.
Yes.
And I'm a freak of nature when it comes to test taking. I loved short essay tests because I know my shit. And I'm a talker, but I'm also a bullshitter. Yeah. So if you don't quite know the answer, I can get to my point without fully going to it. Yeah. So like I took a lot of psychology classes and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about your early days, man. I'm interested.
Well, I grew up as you did, pre-internet, and I just had to find stimulation wherever I could, and that took the form of comic books off the spinner rack, VHS tapes at the local video store, TV, just with the rabbit ears, and not even cable. I was starving for stimulation, entertainment, and it was so interesting that I didn't learn to read properly like a book, like a proper novel. I learned to read through comics. The visual verbal combination, and I couldn't understand why people would want to read just a book of just words. It didn't make sense. And then when you discover Lord of the Rings and Dune and things like that, you have those wonderful
Harry Potter.
You have those book covers which are amazing, but there's also maps and little supporting illustrations, and there's just a whole world that's built around the book itself, and that helped me, gain entrance and admission into these worlds. It was the images, the visuals that really lured me in, and I was a big fan also, and you might know what I'm talking about, of novelizations. They're like movie tie-in books where you go see the movie, like Goonies, and then you go to the library and there'd be the Goonies, adaptation, the Goonies prose novel that's based on the movie, and I love that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I sought it out, I craved it, and I'd be in the library not reading Charles Dickens or Jane Austen like I should have been doing. I was reading, Top Gun, the novelization, books like that really stimulated me and made me want to, explore these worlds with my imagination. Dungeons and Dragons was a huge influence on me growing up, and when we finally I guess when I went to my friend's house and they would have MTV blasting, I get to see the music videos by Def Leppard, Wasp, Motorhead, etc. And so all of that is, believe it or not, in this YA dystopian novel that I recently published called Hammer of the Dogs. This is basically this book is a tribute to my childhood, but not just to 80s pop culture. It's also an effort to kind of get young people to maybe reconsider different ways of approaching dystopian YA narratives. I wanted to make them a little more aggressive and not so soft. I feel like things have gotten a little, what's the word? They're just a little weaker than they need to be. And I wanted to take a step back, acknowledge what was great about the 80s and kind of pull it up to, bring it up to date and show students that, because again, I'm writing for a younger audience, but I'm also writing for Gen X, baby boomers, etc. I wanted to bring everyone up to speed on what's possible with a genre like dystopian YA. So my childhood was everything to me. It shaped me completely, and I just feel so lucky that I got to enjoy watching Star Wars in the movie theater at age 5 rather than some Pixar crap,
Jealous. I'm very jealous because Star Wars is my all-time favorite thing. And it's funny because, your graphic novels and comics. I really got into comics for. I have a whole fucking. I have 3 boxes of comics. I really got into it. And I always wanted to get back to it, but I worked at a mall. So, and there was a comic book store upstairs. The guys knew me. They would pull my stuff for me every week. So like I'd come in, they knew, and then I'd ask them, hey, is there anything new that came out that I could get into? And, I found a lot of really cool graphic novels that way. Like Why the Last Man is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, dude, so well written. The characters, the story, it sounds far-fetched when you're like, yeah, it's a guy and his monkey, and it's there's only women that survived, and it's just the way he wrote it was really good. I don't know if I like the ending, but then again, when you love something so much, it's hard to, I think, accept the end. So there's so many of those. I do think Harry Potter ended well. I actually liked Harry Potter's ending. There's a couple I did. I don't like what they did with the new Star Wars trilogy.
No, I don't think many people do that who grew up with that franchise. But I will say this about popular culture from the the old days, if you will, the 80s, the 90s. Most of it was pre-CGI. Everything was created. You had to build the stage, you had to build the set, you had to build the painting, the backdrops of those sets, and so you had to make the blood and guts. There was something about that hands-on approach to filmmaking that I believe makes those stories more enduring and more powerful, and why today's rehashings and revisions and reboots, they just don't work. I don't think, because of that dependence on digital technology, which again is a theme that I go over in my novel Hammer of the Dogs. It's all about, let's take a step back. Let's not just totally embrace the algorithm. Let's find a different way to not just entertain ourselves, but to make ourselves better, and to get along better, and to be happy in life, rather than always being tied to our phones. Or we don't want to become cyborgs. We want to become something better. And I think those comic books, those movies that you and I grew up enjoying, were always warning us about the potential for an AI apocalypse. And I feel like
Terminator and oh yeah. And I like what you said there too, with how you were approaching it, that you wanted to take it not so soft, because look, we grew up, man. Like
I watched Dawn of the Dead when I was 6 years old. I mean, I didn't watch this, Cars or Finding Nemo.
Exactly. I grew up with fucking Nick at Night and Nickelodeon, and you're talking Real Monsters, which was a super Ren and Stimpy was super fucked up. Like, I don't know if you've watched Ren and Stimpy lately, but that cartoon is fucked. But it's what we grew up on, and like I'll never forget, I watched the very first episode, and it's Ren didn't brush his teeth, so he lost all his fucking teeth, and he's spinning, like, he opens his mouth, and all you see is, like, dangling nerve endings and shit, and I still remember that to this day, and I went in, and I brushed my teeth immediately. Like, and I don't think kids now, growing up, everyone, and, I talk about this a lot, but I feel like everyone is so coddled that by the time they get hit with what life really is, they can't fucking handle it half the time, because they didn't see the stuff that we did at the ages we did.
And it's not that young people are it's not like they are happy with any of this, or they're going along with it all. Many of them don't find this stuff satisfying, which is why they play video games, aggressive video games and whatnot. They're looking for something that's got more momentum, more aggression, and so that's what I wanted to bring back into YA, fiction. I wanted to write a book that I grew up enjoying, which is something like, I don't know, Stephen King's The Long Walk, which is a future shock story in which teenagers are forced to march, and when they stop marching, they're shot by government soldiers in an attempt to create a contest whereby the winner, the last kid walking, gets $1 million live on television. People have kind of forgotten about this novella that King wrote many decades ago, but it made such a huge impression on me. But this was the kind of entertainment that young people used to enjoy, and that's why I believe why manga and anime are sort of dominating the kind of entertainment scene, especially with comics and film. That the kids want stuff that's it's got energy, it's fun. They want stuff that's aggressive. They don't want to just watch whatever Disney spoon feeds them because it's
Oh god, at this point they're the evil fucking empire themselves, man. It's so hard to like take them seriously. And when they bought Star Wars, I was really happy because I knew that they would reboot it.
sure.
And then the first movie wasn't bad. The first movie was legit, and then obviously they had an issue with the director. They brought another director in, and he fucked it all
Yeah.
up. And then they brought the other guy back for the third one to try to fix it, but it was too fucked up at that point. And I feel like that's just Disney in a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they try to cater to everybody,
Well, it's just so
but
weird
not at the same
because
time.
you think they take a lesson from anime or manga or these successful genres overseas, but they seem just to ignore it and do whatever it is they're doing, and I don't understand it. But my students, 10 to 1 prefer to read manga, prefer to watch anime, or prefer anything, K drama, whatever. They don't just absorb the corporate pablum. They look for other things that are interesting and they find them, and a lot of them are creative too. I mean, so many of my students are doing podcasts or launching their own zines or making their own music, etc., SoundCloud, whatever. But they're so fascinated by storytelling, and I want to see them succeed in that. So that's why I wrote this book, Hammer of the Dogs, during a 15-week semester, the biggest chunk of it, because I wanted to show them what it was like every week to turn in something for a workshop and meet a deadline. Every week, 2,000 words, bam. And I wrote it basically live in front of them. I went home and worked on it, but I would bring in the 10 double spaced pages or so that I'd written. I'd read it to them, and then they'd bring in their novels, and then it created this whole thing where everybody was bringing in their own work on a weekly basis. It really kind of ramped them up and got them going. So I think that I've got a lot of hope that this is just like a rough patch, this Disneyfication of popular culture, and that this Netflixation is gonna dissipate, and then the next generation is gonna move forward and hopefully give us something new and different and energetic.
And it's crazy the stuff that comes out of it. I interviewed a girl. It's probably gonna be next week's podcast or the week after, and she actually did. So she was a music major, and she loved cartoons and anime, and she started doing her own versions of sound effects, and she like got viral a little bit because she was doing SpongeBob episodes, and she was doing her own. And, like, she's using, like, cheese graters and pieces of plywood and all this crazy shit. I'm like, dude, you're fucking amazing. I had no idea that you could take those things. And she's like, look, if you look at my table, you would be like, what the fuck is all this junk?
Yeah.
Until you see her on camera utilizing it for the sound effects. And I'm like, dude, you're a fucking genius. Like, and she's a great musician. She could play a bunch of different instruments, but she started posting these things on TikTok and stuff, and she started getting a lot of traction from it. And I was like, that is so cool that you can take something that's already created and creative and kind of add your own spin to it, and or even it's like almost like its own genre.
But actually harkens back, what you're describing harkens back to old time radio where they'd do the sound effects live, in between the the dialogue.
Yeah.
This would be there with like a rain sheet or a thunder sheet, and to create those effects for the whatever the scene it demanded, and that's pretty cool.
It's wild, right? It's like we're so we keep moving forward and forward, but some of the old school things you wouldn't think that survives, and that's what's like still around.
Yes.
I don't know.
But
it's
just to talk about these old ways and versus new ways of doing things. When I arrived in Las Vegas, I was so sheltered from all this pop culture that that had cocooned me, that had kept me in like a little bubble. So when I arrived in Vegas after playing, Dungeons and Dragons and getting my PhD and hanging out in the library, reading, it was a total shock to the system to arrive here after such a clean, way of living. And it wasn't. I never really ran into any danger, but it was hard. There was a moment where I had to adjust. Like hanging out in the bar for 8 hours. Not a great way to to launch a journalism career.
But also, I mean, think about it, man. I mean, how many clocks are in Vegas? There's not many, because they do that on purpose. You just get so sucked up. It's almost like, have you ever been to New Orleans?
Yeah, my wife went to Tulane, so I would every few weeks I would drive up from Orlando, Florida, to New Orleans and hang out there, and that place might be wilder than Las Vegas. I'm not sure.
It gives Vegas a run for its money, and I tell people, if I lived down there, I'd be dead. Like, that city never sleeps, and Vegas is one of those cities that never sleeps. But it's like, it's a different party down there.
I remember being 19 or 20 and walking down Bourbon Street, or in that area with like some kind of green drink. I think it was called a hand grenade or something, and just being like, how the hell did I get this? What? Where am I? This is not how it's supposed to be. But it was New Orleans was always a lot of fun. Plus the music and the food is just so incredible there. You can't.
Dueling piano bar, like when we were down there, it's a culture shock for me because in Pennsylvania and Philly, you can't bring any alcohol outside the building. But down there, they're encouraging it. They're like, here's a to-go cup. And you're like, what the fuck is... Like, I know what a to-go cup is, but what's a to-go cup with booze? Yeah. Like, that's
I kept those cups for many years. I think they said hand grenade on them or something. They had whatever the drink you were drinking. It had like a logo and some kind of... Yeah, I remember that. Going up to a walk-up window and then walking down the street with my drink. They try to replicate that to a degree here on Fremont Street, but it's not... I mean, it's fun, but it's not quite New Orleans level. Though I love Fremont Street. It's where I live. I live a stone's throw, a beer can throw from Fremont Street in downtown Las Vegas.
I'll say, and that's the downtown with the crazy like 3D screen and shit, and people like zip like that was pretty fucking crazy. We did that once,
Slotzilla,
because so we would just stay on the strip. We would be on the strip, and my fiance was like, "Look, let's go downtown. Let's check it out." I heard it's really cool, so we like Ubered down, and it's a very unique experience being down there because that screen and like just being that you got actors fucking dancing, and you have impersonators, and like it's almost like Vegas meets Hollywood meets New Orleans. It's like a mishmash of all these cultures like just thrown together. But it's cool down there. I like it.
And you have also what are now you might call world famous establishments like Heart Attack Grill, where you put on a patient's smock and risk a full cardiac arrest after eating the greasiest, most gigantic piece of fried meat you can possibly find. So
don't they give you like a free burger if you're like a certain size? Like they weigh you before you go in or some crazy shit like that. It's like, I'm good, man. I'd prefer to not have a heart attack while I'm fucking, chugging whatever drink was handed to me,
Next time you're there, check out the Nerd Bar on I think it's second floor of Neonopolis. I recommend it. It's a cool little, pop culture festooned watering hole. So check that out next time you're in that area. I think you'd like it. I like the...
We're due. We haven't been down there in a little while. We're due. It's been, normally we go once a year. I think it's been 2 years since we've been
down there.
And there's
another bar called Millennium Fandom, which is a cool pop culture, bar that has a lot of interesting memorabilia stacked in all the on all the walls. And it's a lot of fun to hang out in. And they play movies. Obviously, they have events.
I probably wouldn't leave. I probably wouldn't leave.
that place, Millennium Fandom, is so close that I can walk over, but it's so dangerous because if I walk over there, I know I'm going to spend 5 or 6 hours drinking and watching whatever The Thing by John Carpenter on the screen or something like that. So
So classic, man. So classic. So, look. So you were, we talked a little bit about your early years,
Yeah.
right? Let's talk about the bar critic
Yeah.
shit, man. And then we'll get into what you got going on with your book. So I want to hear some juicy stories, man.
Juicy story.
I'd imagine you got some couple. I mean, it doesn't have to get too crazy, but the strip club ones, whatever you got going on. Like, talk a little bit about how you got into being a bar critic, and if there's any like times you almost died, that's a good one. Those are always good
No,
stories.
I mean, I've been 86 by several bars, but I never.
That's good.
Really, I never got close to dying. Right? I never got alcohol poisoning, but you know, I just didn't understand anything because I was living this scholastic academic life for so long. They dropped me down in Las Vegas. I did like a poetry reading at the Barnes and Noble in Henderson, neighboring town, city, whatever. And this guy walks up to me after my poetry reading and says, "Hey, I think you're an incredible writer. Why don't you work for me and you can be the you can be the arts and entertainment editor for the weekly newspaper." And I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't know what that entails or what that involves. I had grown up, of course, reading Rolling Stone magazine and things like that, and I'd even grown up reading the weekly paper in back in Florida where I lived, where I grew up. But now that I was in Las Vegas, it's like it's got to be it's got to be more challenging than Tampa, Florida, to cover the entertainment landscape. But I didn't have a job, so I took it. I think they paid me maybe like $18,000 a year, and I don't.
Jesus.
This is like 2002 money, but I'd never really worked a serious full-time job that had commercial considerations. So, we had these salespeople that would sell ads for the magazine. Like they'd go to a strip club and say, "Hey, here's a contract to run an ad in our magazine, in our newspaper for 3 months. See if this works for you. We think this is a great campaign." So they do that, but then it was like not a quid pro quo, but they tried to develop relationships. The salespeople would develop relationships with the bars, restaurants, and strip clubs. And so this one establishment, which I'm not going to name it, but
that's fine.
You know which one it is. I mean, you can see it from the highway, the I-15. They invited me to come in and judge a stripper contest. I'm like 27 years old. I should be a little more experienced. But I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know I'd never gone inside a strip club. I had my bachelor party at Barnes and Noble. I didn't. So I go to judge this strip club, and it was unbelievable. But what really bothered me was every dancer came out and danced to like Nickelback, and I was like,
"Oh God!"
And I was like, "Okay, one Nickelback song, that's fine. Two Nickelback songs, that's not good, but whatever." But by the fifth Nickelback song, these are different dancers. I was like, "This is what the heck? Do they have to play Nickelback?" So I wrote about my experience judging the stripper contest in the newspaper, and I just made a little aside, like I really wish they would play something other than Nickelback, maybe some White Stripes, or just mix it up a little bit. And so they got so irate at the club that they called and started chewing out the sales manager and said, "Don't ever let that MF back into our club again. He's banned from our establishment. He can't go in there. He upset all the girls with his insistence that Nickelback is a subpar rock band." So that's how I got banned from one, gentleman's club here.
That's hilarious. Because of fucking Nickelback. Of all things that you could get banned from a strip club, it's Nickelback.
But I have to say, judging the contest was really eye-opening. Like, I didn't even know those things existed, and they were actually very talented. The pole dancing, they were very athletic.
Oh yeah,
and they were very creative in their sets. Like they would bring in like one dancer brought in like a fake shower that had like that glitter would come out of the nozzle. She'd do like a little dance inside this this manufactured shower. This that could only fit on stage, but it was in danger of like, falling over. It looked like a Godzilla movie.
That's
It looked
impressive.
like a Godzilla movie in some ways, where the guys in a rubber suit and the buildings are delicately constructed, they're going to fall over. But yeah, I learned so much from these kinds of events. And the most interesting thing that I discovered about bars is that how comfortable it is to sit in a dark, even there was still smoking back then, dark, smoky environment, and with a jukebox going and people all around you drinking. And I found it really oddly comforting, which was, like I said, I grew up in libraries, and I didn't think I would find an environment like the bar so helpful. And it eventually got to the point where I was writing in bars. So I would sit in front of the video poker machine, but I'd put my laptop on top of my MacBook or whatever, and I'd start writing whatever articles I needed to get done that week. I also wrote in coffee shops, but bars I found to be very they stimulated my imagination, the darkness, the smoke, etc.
You never know who you're going to run into, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I always felt like, with bars, like from a networking perspective, you never know who you're going to run into and meet and talk to and share stories with. And it's just, I mean, I met some really good friends randomly, in bars. And
the bar for me is a test.
Like
if I invite you to a bar and you say, "Oh, I don't want to. Can we meet somewhere else?" Then I'm like, I'm kind of done with you. Like it's you can learn a lot about someone just by what their reaction is to Hey, do you want to go to the nerd bar with me? If they say, "Oh,
yeah,
can we go to something else instead, like a restaurant or coffee shop?"
Like that.
No.
It's boring, man. It's fucking boring.
Especially
Fuck that
Las
shit,
Vegas. We have great coffee shops here in Las Vegas, but I mean the bars are outstanding, and I love covering places like the Double Down Saloon. I loved Frankie's Tiki Room, and now we've got newer establishments, especially downtown, that are terrific, and I highly encourage you to visit them next time you're here, like the Silver Stamp. And,
yeah, dude. There's so many we still haven't been to. I'd love to go. Have you been to like a good speakeasy?
Yeah, I mean,
or are they just like fucking gimmicks? Because I'd love to check out like a cool speakeasy. I'm a big fan of old fashions, man. That's my thing. So
my favorite old fashioned is at Velveteen Rabbit on Main Street. I'm not sure. You may not have been there yet, but I'll send you some info. I'll send you my little list of bars.
Oh yeah, I'll take it.
A lot of them are obviously congregated downtown where I live, but we have the best bars downtown, and I highly encourage you to anyone who's in Vegas to circulate in that area, because that's where all the action is, the new establishments, and it's fun to go to like I said, a dark place, listen to some music you haven't heard in a while or haven't heard at all, and just kick back and meet people from Zappos, people who work downtown, other entrepreneurs downtown, and again, a lot of academics, professors live in that area as well, so journalists, writers, visual artists. It's a great place. So it's cool downtown. It's not like obnoxious, maybe as like Wicker Park or no offense, but you know what I mean. It's not as
yeah, no, I get it.
As Portland or whatever. It's more like a blue collar creativity that's going on down there. So I really appreciate it.
Hey guys, Matt coming at you from The Real Drunks. Hey, if you're into movies, booze, craft beers, and just shooting the shit with your friends, join myself, Jake, and Alyssa on The Real Drunks on the Deluxe Edition Network and anywhere you get your podcast from. That's The Real Drunks, REEL, The Real Drunks. Check us out.
It's cool, man. I mean, I liked it more than I thought I was going to. So before we get into your novel, I wanted to talk a little bit about, and you kind of hit on it a little bit, but what did your creative process look like? Because I think it's fascinating when when you come up with an idea and then you just fucking, and I remember doing this in high school. I was writing in my creative writing class, and remember, I'm 37, so like This was 25 years ago, 23 years ago, whatever. And I remember writing this in my old school vanilla notebook. I was writing a mummy story. So like we were tasked with writing a short story, and I just kept going. And my teacher kept saying to me, "Hey, when are you going to write more? Like, this is a really good," like she wanted me to like write it because she was into it. And like, because of that, I kept writing it. And it was this, it should have only been a couple pages. And for me, I just kept writing and writing. So I always ask people that are authors, like, what's your creative process look like? And, how did you come up with this, dystopian novel, science fiction in your mind when you started?
Well, first, let me say, I wish I had a teacher like that as I was writing this novel. I mean, do they even make teachers like that anymore? I mean, that's so cool that she appreciated.
I still remember, dude. It's been over 20 years, and I still remember her saying, "Hey, you need to," and I never finished it. I never finished the story. She's like, "You need to finish this. I want to know what happens." Yeah. And I think the semester ended, but I just kept writing it and giving it to her, and it's something I'll never forget. And there's only certain things you get through when you're in high school that you never forget, and that's one of those things I just kind of never forgot. Right. And I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Well, my process differs depending on what I'm doing. Like with the commercial writing to make $1, writing to eat, writing to survive. The process is just to write. Like I don't believe in writer's block because, when you're broke, you don't have any money, you're just going to write as quickly as you can. Write it to the best of your abilities, submit it to the editor, and hope that the check clears. So all of that, like that's different stuff. Like my bar reviews, my restaurant reviews, my art reviews, my film reviews, my book reviews, my band profiles, interviews. I wrote that for money. I had a great time doing it. I probably would have done it for free, but the fact that I got paid for it incited me, it encouraged me, it gave me the energy I needed to go deadline to deadline, and I loved it. I mean, I think as a freelancer, because eventually I was purely freelancing because I was making so much money writing these articles, that I think I cleared maybe like $60,000 one year. What year was that? Probably.
Dude, that's fucking awesome.
2011, which is great, and I never knew that was possible because writing. I was always taught in high school and in the university that writing is like this vocation, the spiritual thing. It was like the romantic notion of the author as alone in the gloom, writing from his soul, pouring out his heart into these stories, these poems. And I learned very quickly in Las Vegas, no one gives a crap about poetry. It doesn't pay. Like, why are people still writing poetry to this day? So my process for the commercial work is just, get the assignment, you'll pitch the assignment, meet the deadline and collect the money. But with the novel, I had a little time to stretch out. Obviously, it's more of a creative thing that I had to do, and so as a result, I found myself really just savoring the process a lot more. I enjoyed myself writing the novel, and I think I had to because I want the reader to enjoy a dystopian YA adventure. And I have to say that the impetus for the novel, which is a scenario in a ruined Las Vegas where the teenagers are killing each other with drones. The idea for this novel came from my stint working as a corporate communications director at MGM Grand. I didn't just write employee newsletters for MGM Grand. I wrote them for Bellagio, Mandalay Bay, Luxor, Excalibur, etc. And because I had an employee badge, I could go anywhere in the hotel. So I would crash these tech conventions, specifically drone tech conventions. And what I found was absolutely amazing. These weaponized robots were on display, and I mean, they weren't armed, but they were moving around, flying around the 1 million feet plus convention area. And it was just a terrifying thing to behold. I mean, the idea that these drones could make their way into the hands of teenagers seemed inevitable, and if you read the news today, you'll see that the cartels in Mexico are using them drones that they're buying them from Amazon, and they're putting improvised explosives on them. They're just dropping essentially dynamite grenades, explosives on each other, which is it's just a minor extrapolation, to get us to the point where kids are using them on each other. And yeah, I loved sneaking around these drone tech conventions with my employee badge and, crashing these horrible parties, because you'd see the connection between, the tech companies and higher education, because there were, engineering students all over the place. Foreign governments were there shopping for the weapons that they were going to use to fight other nations or pacify their own population, right?
That's crazy to
all the
think
military contractors. And Vegas is great. It's like this jewel surrounded by a vast desert, but that vast desert has been for years the sandbox where the government has tested everything from nuclear weapons to cannons to Area 51 is over here. They're probably got all kinds of alien technology that they're testing out.
1,000,000%, by the way, 1,000,000%. I'm a firm believer.
And Creech
in that.
Air Force Base, where that basically that drone pilots work at the Air Force Base. They kill people, thousands of miles away in other countries via remote control, and then they go home to their suburban houses here outside of Las Vegas. It's just a frightening scenario. So that's that launched the idea for this book. Like, I had to get this. I had to talk about these things, but not in a dumb op-ed ranty political way. I wanted to bring these issues to light in an entertaining thrill ride of a story. I wanted to create a fantasy novel that talked about all these things. And of course, if you know anything about sci-fi, I'm borrowing from Ender's Game, Dune, Dune, the Frank Herbert novel, Hunger Games, all of that is in here. Commandy, the Last Boy on Earth by Jack Kirby. All these ideas are in here, but I wanted to do it with a different flavor, a different spin. And so the main character, Lash, is like this gouged young warrior who has to find a way to not just save herself, but also her friends, and then her father, who has been missing but has now suddenly reappeared. She's got to save him from a gang of basically a group of maniacs who roam the desert landscape with a nuclear weapon, threatening to trigger it if the communities they approach don't hand over their gasoline to huff. So,
That's awesome.
But it's as dark as that sounds. I wanted to also pay tribute to the 80s movies, pre-CGI fantasy films that I grew up watching that are so incredible and still hold up today. Red Dawn, Empire Strikes Back, Aliens, Legend, Labyrinth, Tron, Red Sonja, Conan the Barbarian, etc. Like those Dawn of the Dead. Those movies hold up, and the reason they hold up is because they were done. They offer that bright darkness. It's a kind of a dismal scenario, but the characters are so appealing and strive to conquer their enemies and to thrive, really. And that's what I think is missing from so much of contemporary storytelling. It's just it's too grim, everything's dark gray, steel blue, and they do that for CGI effects reasons, because they can kind of mask how terrible the effects actually are. But I'm just tired of everything looking the same. It's the same palette over and over and over again. I'm kind of sick of it, and I wanted to bring back that bright darkness that has long been missing from storytelling the last decade or so.
And that's awesome, man. And I got to tell you, as everything progresses, right? It's like when you're writing or creating something new. Look, at this point, it's hard to create something that's so unique that doesn't build off of other genres and prospects, right? I mean, even something like Hunger Games came from the Japanese version, which was Battle Royale. You ever seen that?
The novel, which came out in the 90s, was stunning.
It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. Hunger Games is like a picnic compared to fucking Battle Royale. It's so, and I didn't know that existed until someone said to me, "Hey, have you ever seen the original?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because the Hunger Games series was really good. They're like, watch Battle Royale. I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever, fuck it, you know. Like, and I'm watching. I'm like, Jesus, this is fucked. But that's how a lot of the like Japanese style culture is when it comes to some of the movies, especially with teens. Like, I forget what the show was on Netflix that came out a year or two ago. There was a zombie show, and it was top 10 for a while. And it was a Japanese style, Korean style zombie show, and it was super good. And it was about teens, and they're trying to survive in high school. And you know what? It's gonna drive me nuts now. Let me see. Zombie.
Oh, was it animated?
Movie. No, it was
or
like
was it animated and they did a live action version?
It was live action. No, it was a show.
Is it called something high school, or am I getting it confused with something else?
I don't think it was high school. All of Us Are Dead.
Oh yeah, I know that. I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
If you haven't seen it, you should really check it out. It's I just love a lot of the different, like, I grew up on the original Dragon Ball Z anime, and like it would come on at 5:30 every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, and it was something you got excited after school. I'd get home, I'd do whatever I needed to for my homework, and I'd be fucking ready for that shit to come on, because that's how it was back then, right? Like, we didn't have DVR. DVR didn't exist unless you were fucking filthy rich at some point. But now everybody has DVR. But it just that Japanese Korean style culture when it comes to entertainment is so fascinating to me. I love a lot of it. Like, I was really big into manga when I was younger. The Yu-Gi-Oh novels are really fucking good because they're definitely way darker than the cartoon that they brought to the US. Like, if you actually read Yu-Gi-Oh, it's fucked up, but it's really good, because he's not this like when you see the US version, he's this like, you almost look at him and he's like, this is prissy fucking dude, he's playing with the card. But when you see him in like the actual like Korean Japanese, I don't know if it's Japanese or Korean. I always forget. But he's so much more darker, and he's so much more fucked up. And have you ever seen is it Death Note? Have you ever seen Death Note?
No, that I have seen.
So good. Like, not the actual, like the manga style Death Note is really good. The movie was weird.
The manga's
that they did on Netflix. So
you've read Berserker and Attack on Titan and things like that. You've read all that stuff as well.
I haven't read Berserker, but I have read Attack on Titan's fucking incredible. So good. Yeah. Like, so good. Because, like, you never know when someone, it's like for me, Walking Dead. When Walking Dead came out as a comic, I got into it maybe after the first volume. So it was 10 comics in, 15 comics in, whatever. And it was a shell shock, because you never knew when a main character was going to die. Yes. Like, you turn it, like, I remember, I'm like reading, I'm like, okay. I turn a page, they'd have their face gnawed off, and then I'd be like, and I'd go back 2 pages. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like, as a comic book reader, it's the same thing if you read something that's almost like not believable. You have to go back a page and reread it. And that's how you know it's one of those shell shock moments, or like the writer did such a good job. You have to go back and reread 2 pages to like feel it again. Like, holy shit, what just happened? And
again, I just don't see that emotional and narrative impact in today's storytelling like we used to. And that's a fairly recent example. I mean, Walking Dead, when did that debut? Like 12 years ago, 15 years ago? The comic, I mean, I feel like...
It was probably 2005, 2006, somewhere around there.
These are like the last hurrahs, really, last moments of just unforgettable pop culture that we were all kind of on the same page with. Now, my students bring me stuff all the time that's amazing, and I'm great.
That's got to be cool, man. That's got to be cool to have, like, have those people that are just so excited about certain genres that you just get this constant overflow of stuff that, I mean, you got to be constantly looking shit up all the time.
I am, and but what's amazing is when they actually bring me their own copy to read. Dr. Keene, please read this. You're going to love it, and just give it back to me when you're done. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. And it certainly beats like grading papers. I much prefer to read their favorite manga than read their essay on, I don't know, Beowulf.
Well, hey, you can use AI these days, right?
Well, again,
that's gotta drive you fucking nuts, man.
Again, that's really what Hammer of the Dogs, my novel, is all about. It's like this encroaching presence of artificial intelligence, of robots, of remote control nonsense, of the digitization, the cyborgization of humanity. It's too much. It's reached a ridiculous degree. And when I went to these tech conventions, they were talking about this stuff years ago. Things like ChatGPT, AI, scripted papers and whatnot. But what was really screwed up was that they were talking about the singularity. This idea that our human consciousness was going to merge with the machine, and we were going to upload our memories into the cloud or something. It was so ridiculous. I couldn't believe that they were serious, but they are serious, and it's a problem. And this AI ChatGPT source for student papers, it's going to spin out of control. I've experimented with it, but I can't get it to work right. It just seems to repeat itself. Like it'll give you some information that's kind of useful, and then in the next paragraph, or maybe the paragraph after, it'll kind of regurgitate that same point, and it's like, oof,
it's it's gonna breed people who are better at talking to AI than actual people. And that's gonna be a job, is being able to get the information you need, and like certain areas, I don't think it's gonna get rid of jobs in any way.
I don't know.
I do think it's going to alter jobs, or like coders. I don't think it's ever going to get rid of a coder, but I do think that it's going to get so good that the coder is going to have a great base code or more advanced code, and it's going to make the ability to create something a lot more feasible in a short span of time.
I mean, that's generous.
But it's funny you say this, and I hope my dad watches it. He watches when I put this on YouTube. He was cracking me up. We had a whole conversation. It was probably 20 minutes about artificial intelligence. He's like, it's gonna fucking, it's gonna get to a point where you never know. It's gonna take over, and I'm just laughing because I'm like, we were talking about supercomputers. I'm like, because he was saying something about that's the future. I'm like, Dad, two scientists recently over the past month have discovered the ability to make a semiconductor that's at room temperature. That's not you don't have to keep it at below freezing. He's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, they just discovered it literally within the past month. It might have even be past couple weeks. And he's like, are you fucking serious? That's gonna change everything. And I'm like, I know. I know, Dad. They're probably gonna get a fucking Nobel Prize if it's legit. You never know with the internet, right? You read shit, it gets big, it gets viral, but you never really know if what they're saying is legit. And I'll believe it when I see them get a Nobel Prize and I see fucking a semiconductor that can sit there in room temperature without exploding.
The constant propaganda that accompanies any new technology, like with the drones. There was all this talk, all this messaging about how drones were going to make everything safer for us, and it was going to improve law enforcement. It was going to improve safety in our communities. It was going to help us reach dangerous areas without risking human life. But it's all just like a smoke show. It's like, no, these are weapons. That's the only purpose of drones, is to control, to surveil, to spy on people, and to blast them, to destroy them. Those are really the only three reasons that drones exist. Everything else is just kind of a byproduct. But they try to flip it around that drones are going to create this wonderful, safe, and egalitarian community. And they might kill people and do all these other terrible things, but that's just you don't need to.
That's only like 5% of
But
it, 10%
it's
of it.
so not true. All you have to do is walk through, or just go online and see where the advancements, where the money is, where the attention is for these drone companies, and we see it now in Ukraine. Like the drone attacks on Moscow and et cetera. It's just going to escalate and get wilder, and I shudder at the potential or the possibility that this stuff ends up in the hands of people who shouldn't have it, because then you've got a real problem on your hand. So,
Oh yeah, and look, that hits home because my fiance, she was born here, but she's Ukrainian. Her mom and dad were in the armed forces. Her mom was in what did her mom do? Her mom can speak like 5 languages. She was, I think, in the Air Force, but she was a secretary because she was a woman. You know how that was back in the day. Her dad was in the Army. They met in Venezuela, like all that crazy shit. But it's super fucked up out there, and I don't think it's gonna get any better. And I think it's funny because they spin all this stuff like it's always going to be good for regular people, but at the end of the day, most of it ends up just being used as a weapon for some government, and then that government takes what they did and they do something else, and it's just it's wild to think about. But before we get out of here, because we got a couple minutes, I always got to ask a couple questions. For one, let's finish the talk about your book. So, for those of you listening, science fiction dystopian novel, Hammer the Dogs. It'll be out September 12th, 23. Is there anything you wanted to bestow upon the listeners about your book?
The book is
outside of what you said already, right?
the book is my tribute. I'm paying homage to those great movies and books that we grew up reading in the 80s and 90s that you just can't find anymore. And I hope that people will take a moment to check it out, because it's doing something very different, which is approaching the issue of drone technology through this dystopian YA framework, and set in Las Vegas, a post-apocalyptic Las Vegas. So to me, it's got like all the stuff that you need for an incredible story. I've designed this incredible. I didn't design anything. She birthed herself through me. Lash, just a badass warrior woman who is fallible, vulnerable, makes a shit ton of mistakes, ends up getting captured by the enemy warlord, and then has to figure out how to get out of this bind and reunite herself with her friends and her family. So I've got everything that's needed to generate a cool story. The only thing I'm lacking is, what most people who publish a book lack today, which is an audience. So I'm hoping that if you do enjoy it, if you buy it, enjoy it, post a Goodreads review, post an Amazon review, and spread the word about Hammer of the Dogs. Can I just? I know we're out of time. Can I just quickly say where the title comes from?
No, we're not. Say whatever the fuck you want, man. You got plenty of time.
I don't know if you remember reading this book.
It
was called Hammer of the Gods, and it was a biography of the rock band Led Zeppelin. And so I never did. In the early 80s. I picked it up, and it just chronicled all the debauchery, hijinks of the 4 members of the band, all the booze and drugs and carousing. And I read this as like a 10-year-old, like, what the heck? This is amazing. How did they get away with this? How did they not get arrested? They were like, they were like gods walking the earth. And I loved the energy of this unauthorized biography. I thought it was just the most amazing thing ever. So, I was trying to tap into that wildness, that long ago way of being a kind of a rough housing adolescent, that freewheeling energy. So I decided to take that title and kind of twist it a little bit by calling my novel Hammer of the Dogs. And of course, that becomes has a lot of symbolic importance throughout the novel that I wrote, the story that readers will discover as they move through Lash's adventures. And it's just a series, really. Hammer of the Dogs is a series of set pieces. So every set piece gets wilder than the one that precedes it, and it finally culminates in a moment of absolute carnage in which a swarm of genetically modified flesh-eating flamingos attack Luxor and the hero Lash, and she uses drones to destroy them, wipe them off the face of the earth. So hopefully that has your attention now, and you'll go out and seek the book.
That's
It's at
fucking
your
cool,
Barnes and
man.
Noble. It's at your independent bookstore, and of course, it's everywhere online that you order books. So track it down and tell me what you think if you get a chance.
So before we go into my final question, I got to ask this because, well, one, you have me intrigued by flesh-eating flamingos, so I'm excited to listen to that. So this will be in both book and audio format
comes
for
out
people
next
like
week,
me. I listen to a lot
September
of
12th.
awesome. What about the future? Do you have any plans to continue on the story? Obviously, I haven't read it yet, so do you have any plans to continue on
I have
the
an
story?
outline for
Maybe, or can
I
you
have
give
an
us?
outline for the second and third volume of Lash's saga.
Let's go.
And
Nice. I love to know if there's. I'm a trilogy reader. I love to know that there's a continuation because I'll fucking read them all. I'll listen to them all. I have to. I'm an absorber, whatever the fuck you want to call it. A
I didn't
binger.
want to be that guy that had 3 unpublished novels sitting around on his hard drive, so I only wrote the first book, but I've outlined the second and third. And in the second book, she takes the fight to Russia, China, and vanquishes her enemies there. And then the third volume, she goes to Mars to fight drones on the red planet.
That is fucking awesome, dude. Love it. I
So
fucking love it. That
it's
is
got a
like
bunch of John
that is like the.
John Carter, Warlord of Mars references and symbols in that third volume.
I was gonna say that's like a hardcore like 80s, early 90s movie for sure. Like, love it, dude. I love it. And let's end on this because I know you're a comic guy, you're a novel guy. 2 questions. It'll be quick. DC, Marvel. Where do you fall? I gotta ask. I have to ask. I always ask.
Well, I mean, they each have their strengths, but I have to tell you, I love the supernatural side of DC Comics with Swamp Thing, the Demon, Phantom Stranger, Jonah Hex. I don't know. I love the war comics that DC published in the 70s and 80s, or 60s, 70s, and 80s. I have to say that DC, for me, is the as far as a comic book collector, a comic book reader, that's where I tend to gravitate. But of course, Marvel is where all the innovation happened with regard to characters and plots and timelines and everything else.
Superman's my all-time favorite.
Well, yeah,
so I can't say that I'm full DC because like I will tell you one of my favorite series with Marvel. I don't know if you ever read it. Was Marvel Zombies.
Oh yeah.
So good. Like they're really good when it comes to playing those different universes and like it's like when you see a zombified Silver Surfer it just changes everything, and let's end on this. What is your and you don't have to go into crazy detail, it's up to you. What's your all-time favorite book or movie or something that you can say like this is like my all-time favorite?
Well, it's definitely Commandy, The Last Boy on Earth by Jack Kirby, which was published by DC Comics originally in the early 70s. It's been reprinted. It's got all these deluxe editions now. You can find it online. But Jack Kirby co-created the Marvel Universe with Stan Lee back in the early 60s, then defected to DC in 1970 to launch his own line of comics, which he had more control over. He didn't have to deal with Stan Lee's interference. And one of the greatest series titles that Kirby introduced and worked on for years was Kamandi, Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, a post-apocalyptic adventure that Hammer of the Dogs, my novel, owes a lot to. So Jack Kirby, for me, is I'll always pick up a book by him. You see my Frank Frazetta book of paintings over here. That's not narrative.
That is fucking
That's not
awesome.
narrative work, but Frank Frazetta is an incredible artist, probably my favorite. And I had to buy this lavish collection of his paintings back there. So if your listeners get a chance, Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta, check him out.
I'm gonna have to check that. I'll tell you one of my favorite all-time favorites, and this is just because I'm going off of. I'm not gonna go mainstream here because I really liked Image Comics, and you know I gotta say my boy that wrote Walking Dead, he is he's a great storyteller, and Invincible. I don't know if you've ever seen that side of his comic series. He basically creates all of his own fucking superheroes. But Invincible is such a good story. I know it ended, and I never got to the end. I have it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Like there's certain things I can't do. I have it. I own it. I just haven't read it because I don't want it to end. I know his series is on Amazon now. But the comic books were so fucking good. If you guys are listening to this,
agreed.
Image with Invincible, amazing story. The way he does his different universes and kind of mashes people together, he does a really good job. But look, I
have a colleague here who writes academic articles and books about The Walking Dead. So I'll send you a link to some of his writings on that. I think you'd find it interesting. It's an academic take on it, but it really teases out, you know, the important symbolism and meaning and themes of these works. So I'll make sure and send that to you.
Yeah, oh, dude, absolutely, I will eat that shit up.
But let me know when you're in Las Vegas because I want to hang out and hit a few bars with you.
Yeah, dude. Look, when me and the wife are out there, I'll let you know because I will tell you we'll stay up all night. So if you're planning to, and we're drinkers, man. So if you're planning to drink, just make sure you didn't start before we got there.
If we do it downtown, it's no problem. I'll just stumble home. But yeah, let's do that next time.
There you go, man. Hey, we Uber, man. At this point, it doesn't. We didn't have that shit when we were younger, man. It's now you just fucking.
I've got the app. I just don't know how to use it. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out soon before you get here.
He'll get it someday. But look, it was a pleasure having you on. I really hope your book, Hammer the Dogs, kills it. It sounds like it's really cool. I'll be excited when I get my copy. I'll definitely check it out, man. And leave this guy a review. Good reads, everybody. Jump on there, leave him a review. This podcast will be out next week. Thursday, 7 a.m. is when I typically launch. I have a lot of people that love to listen to this on their way to work, so I try to release it somewhat early in the morning, and I'll try to get the YouTube video at some. I do all my own editing, and I'm a perfectionist, so when I do that, it takes me even more time to do that. But I will have to say I do have a buddy of mine that's helping me with stuff. Jace, the producer, he's a madman, so he's a really cool guy out of Florida.
Excellent.
I think it's Jacksonville,
Love
Tampa
it there,
area. So. But look, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for hanging out, and good luck.
Let's do it again.
Let's do this again in like 6 months, and we'll see where you're at with your book.
Let's see what happens.
Awesome, man. Well, look, you have a great night, and I appreciate hanging out.
Thank you.